I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight, and especially Lorna and the AestheticSource for sponsoring this evening. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the latest ingredients that they're putting in some new skincare products and how they've been researched and the technology behind them. So the question is, why do we bother with skincare? Well, for a number of reasons. Number one is that it is a huge industry out there. Last year, there was over $2 billion spent in the United States on just anti-aging skincare alone. And in a study that was done by Mintel with the research and the global marketing, that they said over 94% of the people actually did use a skincare regimen. Now, in our clinics, though, probably maybe 5–10% actually use a good skincare regimen, so that there's a great potential to give them good, proven technology that will actually affect the health of their skin overall. So again, patients come first. You know, we have to do their medical treatment first. But since they're interested and they're becoming more discerning about good technology and good products that are out there, it's our job to educate them on what would really be best for their skin. I'm sorry, I'm not touching this and it's moving on there. I apologize. I think I'll just set it down and use the skin here, or the screen here. So basically, what we can do is educate them on some of the products that are clinically proven and the technology that would work with their specific condition. And that's the one thing I love about NeoStrata. I have no financial interest in it, but I've used their products since the 1990s. And we have a skincare division where we just give out samples to the patients, and they basically sell themselves. So it's not like we try to force them on it. And it's just been a great line for us, among other lines too, but this is by far the biggest seller. So what are the objectives in directing our patients to using good therapeutic skincare? Well, the one thing we want to do is improve the barrier function. In the recent years, the past couple of years, this has been the big buzzword, the barrier function. Well, NeoStrata has been addressing this for the past 20 years. And they did in 1997, they actually published a study, which I'll show you, that by improving the barrier function, you can actually minimize a lot of inflammatory diseases and inflammation of the skin and improve the hydration and overall health of the skin. By having a good barrier function, because how they measure a disruptive barrier is by transepidermal water loss. So your skin is going to lose a lot of moisture and be a lot more irritable and intolerant if we don't have a good barrier. Also, it helps maintain normal keratinization. We want to do that by causing that exuviation or that sloughing off of the skin, so we get that natural cell turnover of the epidermis. Then we also want to address that dermal compartment, where we want to plump and repair that dermis, stimulate the hyaluronic acid, which is the big matrix that bathes the collagen, the elastic fibers. So we want to maintain that firmness and that plumpness of the skin. And we can actually do that fairly well now with some of the products and technology that we have available. So what I'd like to do is review some of the AHA technology, because this was the initial technology that actually started this whole skincare revolution of anti-aging products, along with Retin-A and with the alpha-hydroxy peels. So the first generation glycolic acid is still a very viable product. It's a great resurfacing product, in addition to having pronounced effects on the epidermis and dermis. The second generation hydroxy acids are what we call the polyhydroxy acids. They're more gentle, more moisturizing, as they have multiple hydroxyl groups to attract water and bring it into the skin and hydrate. It's a slightly larger molecule that's still been able to penetrate through the epidermis but not cause that stinging or irritation. So for your sensitive skin, rosacea patients, patients with eczema, it's a great moisturizer. Plus, there have been shown to be many other benefits in that it inhibits MMPs, like the breakdown of collagenation, the breakdown of collagen by inhibiting collagenase. It actually can inhibit glycation, and it's a very potent antioxidant. And finally, our third generation are complex polyhydroxy acids. So they've just kind of improved on the molecules, which even have more effects in that they're better moisturizers, more potent antioxidants with the anti-glycation effects, and they've all been shown to improve the barrier function in addition. So they work on both the epidermal and the dermal compartments. And at the NeoStrata Company, we have Dr. Van Scott and Dr. Yu to thank for devoting their life to the development of the skin technology, producing numerous publications on this, and not just being out, to get the latest fad and collect the money for it. They actually do the science behind it. Dr. Van Scott now is currently probably 94, and he's in that lab every day doing these tests. They've just developed a new cell culture lab so they can do studies from the, from ground zero in the fibroblasts and melanocytes to augment their work. So thanks to them, their research is their heritage. In the 1970s and actually 1974, they actually published in the Archives of Dermatology the first study of the alpha hydroxy acids and what a pronounced effect it had on the process of keratinization. And since keratinization affects probably 50% of our dermatological disorders, it had a pronounced effect and is very effective for many different skin conditions. Shortly after that, in 1996, in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology, they actually published a study how multiple alpha hydroxy acids, including lactic, citric, and tartaric, actually had a pronounced effect on reversing photoaging and aging of the skin by reversing photo damage in the epidermis and in the dermal compartment. This was a study where they applied a 20% formulation of the topical cream to one forearm and a vehicle to the other forearm, and at 6 months they biopsied the skin, they measured the plumpness with calipers, and what we were able to see was that this is the pre-treatment, the baseline, and the treated side. You can see that this compact stratum corneum actually developed into a more basket weave. The epidermis thickened from this atrophic flattened epidermis into the more undulating, thicker pattern with the normal reedy ridges. You can see the Gren zone here of solar elastosis, the collagen elastic type that have been damaged, that this was repaired. And on staining of the dermis, they actually showed an increase in new elastic fiber formation and also an increased staining of hyaluronic acid and the glycosaminoglycans. Today, there's still ongoing research of the first-line alpha hydroxy acids. A very well-known dermatologist, Zoe Dralos in North Carolina, had recently done a study which was presented as a poster at the latest American Academy of Dermatology meeting, showing their effect as an anti-aging line actually for men, because we don't have a lot of effective products that are actually marketed towards men, but they have skin problems just like the women, and they're actually becoming more aware of this. So this was a 20% foaming glycolic acid wash, a mixture of a poly and glycolic acid lotion during the daytime with an SPF of 15 and a 15% glycolic lotion at night. And they showed a marked improvement over baseline. They had a 41% even at 1 month, and then increased at 3 months in both the texture and the smoothness. And just to show a few pictures of this, you can see that the crow's feet, the fine lines and wrinkles were diminished just by using this very simple regimen, because men aren't going to put a lot of different products on their face, so the simpler the better. And here you can see an increase, or marked improvement in the skin tone and decrease of the hyperpigmentation. Here's just the first article in 1997 that was actually in the British Journal of Dermatology that Dr. Bernardesca from Italy did these studies and showed that, I'll show you in the study here, they took templates where they applied different products like glycolic acid, and then they had the polyhydroxy acid, gluconolactone, and tartaric acid, and then they had a negative control, and then they applied these products to that specific spot twice daily for a month. And then they applied a known irritant, sodium lauryl sulfate, in a 6% to the skin under occlusion, or at 5% under occlusion for 6 hours. And upon taking it out, they measured the transepidermal water loss as a function of the barrier function. And that you notice the marked redness and erythema and the dryness and cracking on the untreated sites, and the sodium lauryl sulfate was very irritating and broke down the skin barrier. You can see up at the top sites, there's less erythema. The skin looks pretty intact. That's where there was a marked decrease in the water loss, indicating an improved barrier function. This is just showing again how some of the alpha and poly and bionic acids actually improve the epidermal component, giving a normal basket weave stratum corneum and a marked thickening of the epidermis. So it has a pronounced effect on the epidermis in addition to the dermal compartment. Now I'd like to focus a little bit more on the plumping agents down in the dermis to give our skin that firmness and the volume that we tend to lose as we age with the force of gravity and just the general degradation. So I'd like to look at 4 new compounds just to make you familiar with them. The first one is aminofill, and NeoStrata developed this, it's been out a couple years in a product called Line Lift, which was a targeted treatment to help plump where patients did not want to use a filler. This was a new acetylated amino acid that Dr. Van Scott actually discovered in the lab, where he had applied some to his skin and wrapped it in cellophane, and the next morning when he woke up, he had like a goose egg on his arm. So he did a biopsy, and they went and they took this from ground zero through a proof of concept studies into an actual product. So it's kind of neat to see all the development. So basically their early screening results revealed that it was a very fast producing compound, or it had a very rapid effect on enhancing dermal matrix production. It wasn't just swelling fluid that when they looked at the biopsy, they were able to show in their cell culture lab that this product could penetrate the skin in the Franz cell culture. And then it also, in fibroblasts, it was shown to increase hyaluronic acid synthesis and collagen expression, at the same time being gentle and non-irritating, non-stinging. So they did some proof of concept studies then that subsequently followed, that it showed it penetrated and caused a much more rapid plumping and production of glycosaminoglycans and hyaluronic acid than anything out there in the market. So they did 4 of these studies, and they showed that there was a dramatic increase from up to 65 to almost 99% over other compounds that are currently out on the market. So they showed this by an expert grading system and with pinch recoil and caliper thickness, that there was over 150% increase in epidermal thickness, 50% increase in the papillary dermis, and over 100% increase in the hyaluronic acid with a colloidal iron stain. So going from the proof of concept studies, then they went to some human studies where in this study, they actually looked at 8 patients where they applied aminofill to their skin for 8 weeks. And they put on the active aminofill and then kind of an occlusive moisturizer over it to get it to penetrate the skin. And you can see here that at the untreated versus the treated, that there was a dramatic increase in the treated here of almost a 4-fold increase in just 8 weeks. So you can see that did have a dramatic plumping effect. So this is on skin biopsy that you can actually see the increased dermal staining. This is the treated side versus the untreated. You can see the darker bluish staining from the colloidal irons, indicating increase in acid mucopolysaccharides. And then this little brown staining was actually a cytoplasmic stain showing that there was more dermal fibroblast activity and collagen production with this product. So it's not just swelling or irritation, it actually is skin structures that's being produced there. So looking at the clinical study then, you can see in 8 weeks there was a marked improvement in the crow's feet and the overall texture. Again, this was just at 6 weeks. You can see the glabella lines have filled in, so they were initially developed this to help augment the effects of our filler, or for patients that were needle phobic or that weren't ready for a filler. And you can see the nice improvement in the fine lines and wrinkles over on the treated side. Again. So now what they've actually done is been able to incorporate this as an overall treatment to get an overall plumping effect, which we'll talk about. Another matrix building ingredient is one of my favorites called neoglucosamine, or the NAGs. So we got the NAGs that help stimulate the GAGs when they're produced. So it's hopefully able to easy for you to remember. So N-acetylglucosamine is the main component of hyaluronic acid. The main matrix component that plumps the epidermis, that bathes the collagen, the elastic fibers. You take the polyhydroxy acid, D-glucuronic acid, or like a form of gluconolactone, combine it with this N-acetylglucosamine, and you have hyaluronic acid. They've been able to show that N-acetylglucosamine can penetrate through the epidermis and reside in the dermis, unlike hyaluronic acid, which is too big a molecule and will not penetrate through there. So this is one way that they can supply the substrate so that your body can actually increase the production of the glycosaminoglycans in there. So they found that over time, like everything else, this kind of diminishes with age and we get thinner and less plump and firm. And they've shown that it can work synergistically when combined with retinoids such as retinol or retin-A. So they're real good at taking compounds that they found to work synergistically in their formulations and make sure they're compatible to get enhanced effect. Also, it actually has been shown to be an exfoliator and will actually reduce pigmentation. This is just a study showing how that it can plump the skin versus the untreated at about 4 to 5 times normal. And this is just one of their clinical use studies where they test everything scientifically and then do a clinical study on each individual ingredient and then combined. So this is just the other benefits of the neoglucosamine. It's a non-acid exfoliator, so it can be combined with retinol, unlike acid products. It's been shown to inhibit tyrosinase, so to reduce pigmentation, and at the same time it helps exfoliate and disperse pigmentation. I just briefly like to talk a little about maltobionic acid. This is a plant-derived natural 3rd generation AHA called the Bionic Acid. It's derived from corn sugar, very potent humectant, very potent antioxidant. It also inhibits the breakdown of the substrates, the collagen, the elastic tissue by being an MMP inhibitor. Also has been shown to inhibit pigmentation formation by reducing ultraviolet-induced pigmentation. They studied this by adding MSH, melanocyte-stimulating hormone, to culture cells, which is what happens with outdoor ultraviolet light. It's also a very potent anti-glycation agent. And as with the alpha-hydroxy acids, we saw that it improves both the epidermis and the dermal compartments, and it's non-irritating. This is just showing some of the firmness, and the elastic recoil is increased after applying it to the skin twice daily for 6 and 12 weeks. Also, again, just to reiterate how it improves that epidermal and dermal compartment by enhancing the epidermal renewal. And this is the colloidal iron stain showing the increased blue staining indicative of increased glycosaminoglycans and hyaluronic acid production. And our final dermal component would be the Matrixyl Pepside. This is not a NeoStrata product, but they're not afraid to use other good technology that has good basic scientific studies behind it. I'm sure you're all familiar with this peptides, and the Matrixyl is in it's the pal-KTTKS, which is in the Strivectin. I know that's a big product in the US, but a slightly higher concentration. This has been shown to increase the dermal matrix with the collagen, fibronectin, and the glycosaminoglycans. So they incorporate this in there. A new factor that they've actually put into their new dermal replenishment is the natural moisturizing factor. And somehow I kind of missed this during, when I studied skin basic physiology back then. But what this is actually a conglomerate of amino acids that are in the stratum corneum that actually work as humectants and attract and bind water. They think they come from the breakdown of the filaggrin down in the, the papillary dermis and epidermis. Now, they say the stratum corneum is biologically dead, but biochemically very active, and that there are enzymes that are actively involved there, that are involved in the shedding process and the absorption of water. They say about 1/3 of the water that gets into our skin, or the stratum corneum, is actually bound with these enzymes, and that's what gives us hydration, and we need that in order for these enzymes to work. So they've shown that with age, the natural moisturizing factor in these amino acids decreases, so we need to build them up. So they're using the technology Produ as a source that closely mimics these amino acids. That's very close to the natural moisturizing factor and really accounts for a lot of excess hydration and to really plump that stratum corneum layer and into the epidermis and dermis. So with that, we'll introduce the dermal replenishment, the Skin Active. So this is a great new formulation for very dry skin, but it still has the anti-aging ingredients in there in addition to extra moisturization agents. So you can see it has the aminophil, the N-acetyltyrosinamide that firms, plumps by really enhancing that matrix production, the neoglucosamine to help disperse pigment and also to help exfoliate in addition to plumping the gags, Bionic Acid to work on epidermis, dermis, peptides to increase that collagen and filaggrin, along with the moisturization of the Produ and a sugar saccharide to actually help bind ingredients in the stratum corneum also. So with that, I'll just do a brief introduction on another new product. This is the Smooth Surface Daily Peel Pads that contain the aminophil. This is a 10% glycolic acid that actually has been combined with arginine for an amphoteric system to increase the pH so it's not stingy and not irritating. So these pads do not have to, or these peels do not have to be neutralized. You can use them in addition to your regular skin regimen to give you enhanced exfoliation and enhanced production of the epidermal and then the dermal matrix components. So it's a simple thing to activate. You apply the bottle of the solution into these nice peels, and you can, there's about 36 pads in here, and you can just rub them on your face like after washing and then apply your regular regimen. So it's an extra step to give you an added boost and enhanced or synergistic effects. The pads contain the aminophil, glycolic acid, and then the arginine to make them non-irritating in that kind of amphoteric system. So they're designed as an added boost for daily home care to improve and refine the texture and tone and diminish pigmentation along with your fine lines and wrinkles. So there's currently a clinical study by Dr. Michael Gold out of Nashville who's doing this, and we hope to be able to report more on that in the fall for you. But they seem to be a nice extra additive that's a simple thing to do to give you that added boost for your anti-aging and skincare. So I think Dr. Cliff very nicely discussed the sheer physical sunscreen that has pure physical factors, that's very sheer. We did a little clinical use study on it because unfortunately we don't have it in the US yet. You guys always seem to get the good products first, but we did a little study post-procedurally, and I can tell you that immediately after chemical peels, glycolic TCA, microneedling, non-ablative, laser resurfacing, and IPL, other lasers, that was applied immediately afterwards and was non-irritating. We didn't have any problems, so it's a very good sunscreen and a nice product with a nice sheer feel to it. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Cliff, and please hold your questions and we'll be around to answer them all. So thank you very much.